Hi, everyone. My name is Stella Guan. I am the founder and CEO of Path and Bound. Today, we have a guest. Her name is Donna Carroll, and she is a UX designer. She used to be a dance entrepreneur and apparel designer, and she is actually a recent graduate of Path and Bound of our portfolio school program. Welcome, Donna.
Hey, yay. Thanks, Stella. Great to be here.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to interview you today because I've known you for a while now and I've been chatting with you probably every week or even several times a week, helping you through this journey that you're about to embark on, which is really exciting. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about how you got here and what struggle you have had in the past and also what you look for in the future. So without further ado, I want to ask you, so you were a dance entrepreneur before. You also did apparel design and you were really into outdoors. So you have had this really colorful and amazing life. What led you to design?
Yeah, I like a great variety of things, but I mean, my whole life I've been interested in design and the positive impacts that design can have on every single thing in our lives, right? From the coffee cup we drink out of to the car we drive to the computer systems that we use. And in my younger years, I discovered apparel design. And so I studied fashion design at school and then went on to design for big companies like Lane Bryant and Target and Talbot's. And in that, I found a little bit of meaning lacking for me. It was important to me to, or it became important, I learned, to have a positive impact and more meaning in what I do. And so that's when I discovered ecstatic dance, which is basically a free form dance party on Sunday mornings. Um, and so I discovered that, and then I started one in Oakland, California, and ran that for 12 years and created a bunch of stuff in that. And, it's interesting. I think every entrepreneur is also a designer at heart, right? Because we're constantly solving problems and constantly learning
I
how to
agree.
fix things. And yeah, yeah. So when the pandemic hit, um, I really had to take stock because I had an event production business of like, well, obviously this isn't happening right now. And what do I want to do? And I really missed the more classical aspects of design. And so I did some research and found out like, oh, well, I live in Silicon Valley. All my friends work in tech and like, what is this about? And it's so ubiquitous in our lives now. And I really, that really appealed to me. And so, yeah, I kind of fell in love with UX design as I started researching it more and started doing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think you have a lot of really different and interesting combinations. Like you said, you live in Silicon Valley, which is like everybody is in tech, right? I think it's really interesting that in a lot of different cities, you kind of have this dominant industry, and you're kind of really immersed in it. So in the past couple of months that you've been really exposed and immersed in design, do you think your understanding of design and specifically in UX design change over the course of your study compared to when you were just looking into it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know that it changed. I know that it definitely deepened. So at first it was kind of like this idea of what I thought it was going into it. And, I like the idea that it's solving real problems. I like the idea that it's iterative. These are all concepts that are familiar to me and important to me in any work I do. And then as I dove deeper into it, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many methodologies for really understanding the user and really understanding your own designs and your workflow and how that impacts people. And I think, going back to my days in the fashion world, I never got to see that. I never got to understand what my designs were like for people to actually wear. It was
Oh,
all concept. And then
interesting.
we designed it and put it
Uh-huh.
out there. And if it sold, that means that was a good thing. But we never were like, okay, well, what's this like to wear over time and what's the actual experience? So we weren't diving so deep into that. And with UX design, I love it that we're like, okay, well, what is like, how do you keep people engaged for the long term? And that's, give them a long, good experience over time. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. I actually never knew that in the fashion design industry, they don't really, I guess, like follow the same methodology, right? It's kind of like, okay, we have these concepts. We think it's going to sell really well. Let's see if it does. And if it does, we'll keep making. If not, I mean, in a way, it's kind of a market testing, but it's kind of like you're using the real, I guess, like sales cycle to actually test it, which may result in a disaster if it's not
Yeah.
successful.
Well, and there are other ways to test things, and that was a really long time ago, and maybe now they are, getting smarter and doing that. But back then we really weren't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. And I think the fact that you get to understand the business side more, it'll help you whatever in the future you do, right? Like maybe you want to be an entrepreneur again, who knows, right? So it's kind of like a really integrated and also really in-depth field, which hopefully will lead to many more opportunities for everyone. So
Yeah.
my next question is there anything that you like the most about design, and is there anything that you hate the most about design? What's your favorite and what's your least favorite?
That's a really good question. Before we go into that, I want to tie back to the whole business understanding of business thing, because I think it is really important, and I think that's missed a lot of times. Of like, in order to really understand what we're designing, like we have to understand the business implications of it, and to go back to like, okay, well, how will this impact the bottom line? How will this impact the customer? And yeah, the more that I understand about business, the easier it is for me to understand why we make choices that, you know, might not at first make sense, or just that there's like a whole like root system underneath the soil. Like the design is like the flower, but there's this whole root system underneath that has to support this flower, the design that's coming from that. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that I love about design, really. That like, design. It's just this like very forward facing thing that people interact with. And I mean, one of my favorite things about design is when design is done really well, it's invisible.
Yes,
You'll
I
notice,
love that. Yes, absolutely. I
right?
agree. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's like, how do you make the choices to get to that point where it's not like screaming at you. It's not like fading into the background. It's just completely just neutral. And then it just becomes this
It
part of
kind
your
of
life.
it kind of clicks with the user, doesn't it? Like if something clicks, it fits perfectly and you don't notice almost you don't notice the existence of it, but it's there. And if you pull that away, you kind of feel the pain because it's not there anymore, right? It's kind of like, it clicking with the user. No, I love that. So what's your
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
favorite part?
What's my least favorite part? Um, I don't know. I really like everything about the design process. I, I like that it's so varied. You're talking about before, my background is really varied. I don't like to just work on one thing and, like just I like to have lots of variety in my life. And I really like that UX design includes that, from, the
Yeah.
interviews to the designing to all of that. It's just like, love the variety. So, I mean, one thing that I don't like, I don't know. I don't like it when it's not done well.
Well, don't
It
we all do
bothers me. I
that?
get like all itchy. I'm all like, no, just
I
move that a
know.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No,
And
I
I'm
think
like
mhm.
constantly, I do this weird thing where like I redesign things in my head. You probably do this too. I'm like constantly, I
Mhm.
see a sign and I'm just like, okay, move it that way, color this way.
Right.
Like,
That's that's so exciting to hear because I think it really shows your true passion. If you don't have this passion, you won't be designing in your dream. I heard that you design in your dream, right? It's
I
something that
do.
yeah, it's something that I do too. Actually, the other day I was thinking about the logo of another designer who is in our portfolio school, and I can't believe I was thinking about it in my dream, right? And I told her about it. She's like, "Oh, that's so nice." Like, well,
Well, it's like
having
our
made
brains are
dreams
constantly working to solve these problems, right? And
exactly.
because we are
Yeah.
designers, it's like, yeah, I do. As I was learning Webflow, it was like my dreams were almost like Tetris. Like I loved Tetris when I was a kid. It was like my favorite. Like, how do you fit the boxes in the thing? And
Mhm.
so it's like Webflow is kind kind of like that, where you're like fitting all these boxes together
Yeah,
and then making it
absolutely.
responsive. And so I was totally dreaming of that, of just like, trying to work out the system in my mind as I was sleeping.
I love that. I think we probably have the same dream, which is funny. So
Yeah.
now I know that you're looking at design jobs, right? You're out in the
Mhm.
world, trying to carve out a new path for yourself. What is one thing that you're most unsure of or kind of frustrated by when you search for a UX design job?
Um, I think that when people talk about finding jobs, a lot of people talk about finding jobs through their networks. And so just sending off random applications doesn't really work that well, which I totally agree with. As someone who used to hire people, I never hired someone who was just random. Fine. It was always like, or you get to know them before you hire them, right? And so I think for me, it's like doing the work of networking and finding those connections in a way that feels authentic to me. That's kind of where my challenge point is at this point. But one of the things that has really been super helpful since I have my portfolio done, my portfolio, it feels so authentic to who I am right now.
It really
And
does.
yeah,
I'm
it
so
really
proud of
does.
you.
It feel, thank you. But it feels like me, so it makes those conversations easier. Where it's like, okay, I have finally have something that feels like a representation of me online, and then we can, go from there and talk about it. So that's helpful.
Yeah, so I really love that you brought up this point because that's one thing that I actually try to push forward in our portfolio school program is I want people to feel comfortable talking about themselves, even though before they may not be. A lot of people are really shy and they're obviously not really trying to show off a lot of things, but I told them you're not actually showing off anything in your about page. You're actually telling a story, which everybody has. You were just not aware of it before, and I really love how you kind of picked a few snippets of your life that seems insignificant sometimes, but it really forms together to tell the story why you're in design and how does design influence your life, right? So it's
Mhm.
it's kind of like listening to a storybook, and it makes you feel something, right? And when you interview, people can actually relate something to what you said, and it'll be a great icebreaker. So I really
Yeah.
love that. So
Yeah.
what advice do you have for people who are maybe unsure if they should invest in education, if they're thinking about changing their career, since you personally did some investments, and how can you speak to that?
Um, I think it's an investment in yourself. Like this sounds like a ad or something, but no, it's really true. I think that, if we're not investing in ourselves and following our own passions, like what's the point of having money? I mean, like it's kind of like the best self-care for your spirit that you could ever give your spirit. And your creativity is like to honor that by continuing to learn and whatever way you learn best. And I think for me, having a structured program, it really works, and having mentorship really works. Some people can do it on their own, and I've done that before. I read books all the time and I learn on my own, but to do something that really stretches me, like having a coach by my side is it changes everything. It really like propelled me, I think, to the next level much quicker than I could have ever gotten, or if I could have even gotten there on my own, just to have that expert mentorship and guidance. And I was talking to my boyfriend the other day and about this program, and I was like, Stella, she's so awesome. You just like the way
Oh,
that you give mentorship and guidance. It's like you're tough. Like you're not an easy one, but
no, I'm
it's
not.
like no, but also like just the right amount of encouragement. It's just that it's a hard balance to strike, but for me it really worked. It's just like, yeah, your toughness really encourages me to become a better designer. And even as I was designing my portfolio, I was like, oh, in my head I was like, oh, Stella would tell me to put more white space there.
Well,
So it's like your words.
that's how you
Yeah,
know
your
it's
words.
working.
Exactly. Yeah, your words definitely are in my head as I'm designing. So it was a super positive experience, and definitely if anyone is wondering if they should invest in their education, the other thing is like definitely do it because it comes back to you tenfold over the course of your lifetime. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously, we choose to invest in our lives in different ways, and it comes down to our current priority, right? Because some people
Yeah,
they would rather invest in a gym membership, which is awesome. But for other people, if they're thinking of a change, if you think about it, if you invest in a gym membership, it's also about you thinking about change in your overall health, in your body shape and everything. So if you want to change in career, it makes sense to invest in education, right? So yeah, I'm
yeah.
super glad that you found mentorship so helpful. And I actually sometimes I likens my style of instruction to um, a German creative director. And actually, I read that analogy from a really famous designer called Tobias van Schneider. So he's a well-known design entrepreneur, and he is German himself. He kind of did a comparison between German creative director versus American creative director versus Russian creative director. And the German kind, it's sort of like the really blunt and honest, no bullshit type that just points out everything you need to do and then just leave you to it. The American ones, interestingly, it's like really nice and kind of beat around the bush and said a lot of nice things before they even give you any feedback. And they beg you not to tell HR. Which is kind of funny. I mean, it's kind of alluding to kind of the corporate culture in America, right? And the
Yeah.
Russian kind is obviously an overgeneralization and kind of for humor, but it says something along the lines of, "I hate it. I'm gonna do it myself. Go home." Right? That's a little too much. Hopefully, I didn't
Yeah.
do any of that.
No, that's not helpful.
No, exactly, exactly. So maybe I'm German.
Yeah. Maybe you are.
Exactly, exactly. So, I would love to hear what your actual experience was while you were doing the portfolio program. We actually ran through it really quickly, right? It's only 6 weeks, and you're supposed to really completely overhaul your portfolio from beginning to end. And it really sounded actually crazy to myself, even though I created the program. What was your experience?
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Definitely, it was. I mean, but it was such a clear process that you took us through, and so it was like there was never a point in the process where I was like, I don't know what to do next. It was always just like, okay, I have a lot of work to do, and I have a lot to learn because I didn't know Webflow and I didn't know the program, but I knew where I was going and what I was doing every step of the way. So that was just like beyond. I can't even tell you how helpful that is because for me, when I get to the point where I'm like, I don't know what to do next, or if I feel too overwhelmed, then that's like when I need an intervention. But with
Yeah.
this program, it was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a lot of work to do this week, but like I'm just like I just need to sit down and put my head down and get through it. And I like that kind of immersion too. Like I don't know, there's something to me about like, oh, get in, like get really focused on it and let yourself like dive into the project of it and dream about it, and just like there's this like satisfaction in the immersive process of it, and then like coming out the other end like, oh wow, I have this like cool thing that I made that like I feel so proud of. It's like, yeah, it was good. And I remember in college I used to do that with my fashion design projects, and I loved that. It was like, okay, I'm gonna take this time and like dive into this project and create what I need to create, and then come out on the other side and find my work life balance again, and that's okay. Like I think it's good to have those times of like complete creative immersion.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you found it helpful, and it's really just because if you really want to create something, right, you really have to devote as much of your energy into it in that amount of time. Otherwise, you're going to end up putting it off. And I actually see a lot of designers doing that, which is fine if they're not currently looking for another opportunity. But even myself, I found it hard to improve or rebuild my portfolio because there's other things to do, right? So if you don't
Mhm.
dedicate that time to really change that, then it's probably not going to be changed even after a year, which is not going to help you with your career. So I'm so glad you took an opportunity
Yeah.
you took the opportunity to do it and kind of took a chance on us. So now that you're looking ahead into the future and finding a job and everything, what is your long term goal as a designer, if I may ask?
um, yeah, that is a really good question. I think that I just read an article that talks about players and coaches. And it's like, when you first start out, you're a player and you're just like in the pool and you're like working hard and you have a coach, right? I eventually want to get to that point where I'm the coach and not literally coaching people, but where I'm managing people. And like, I love teaching people. And so teaching them and guiding them and, like having a team that can create something really great. I love collaboration. I love teamwork, that kind of stuff. So that's my, big picture goal with this stuff. Just like, yeah,
That's
becoming that
amazing.
coach.
So it means you have big plans for yourself. You want to be in a leadership position, you want to give back, you want to teach, which is actually really going to help you become an even better designer, whatever you wanted to do, right? So I kind of reflected back on my own experience, and ever since I started teaching, I felt like I'm learning so much, even a lot more than before, because I have to be prepared to be asked, all kinds of questions. And before, nobody really asks you questions. Clients just give you feedback, but they don't ask you, wait, how do you do that? They don't care, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of my teaching journey, I kind of had to really review a lot of things because I forgot how to do them. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
wait a minute, I got to know this because it's going to come up in class. So I think you're
Yeah.
definitely going to get there because you're so personable and you're so enthusiastic. I think you'll make a great manager, designer, whatever else you want it to be. You'll be very
Oh,
successful.
thanks. Yeah, and it's about having impact too.
Yeah.
We only live once, and I want to have as much impact as possible, and being able to impact others who are, working toward the same goal. It's like
Yeah,
it's a dream.
absolutely.
It's a good
I love
dream.
that. Well, thank you so much, Donna. It was a pleasure speaking to you as a guest on our program. And if you want to hear more of this, stay tuned to our program. We try to update every week. And my name is Stella Guan. I'm the founder and CEO of Path and Bound. We will see you again next time.